Hello everyone, we are from Group 7. We would like to present our presentation about Discourse and Race. Our group consists of Muhammad Fuad Ashidik, Anita Melati, and Nasafa Septara Harjo. In our presentation, we would like to present 5 topics. The first is introduction. The second is whiteness studies and its critics. The third is elite discourse and racism. The fourth is everyday discourse and the new racism. And the last one is positioning theory and storyline analysis of racist online discourses based on Lin and Tong 2009. The first topic is about introduction. Before we discuss further, it would be better if we understand the meaning of discourse and racism first. Racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. In the other word, racism is the conscious or unconscious belief that a particular race is superior to another. Theon Adrianus van Dyke is a scholar in the field of text linguistics, discourse analysis, and critical discourse analysis. According to him, racism is a social system domination of a specific kind of power of one group over other groups, in our case of Europeans as whites over non-Europeans people. So, racist discourse is a form of discriminatory social practice that manifests itself in text, talk, and communication. Together with other, like nonverbal, discriminatory practices, racist discourse contributes to the production of racism as a form of ethnic or racial domination. It does so typically by expressing, confirming, and legitimating racist opinions, attitudes, and ideologies of the dominant ethnic group. When a person produces a racist discourse, so that person actually have contribution to produce racism.
Introduction. Many researchers have investigated the idea of race as a discursive construction. The role of discursive in racialization process and the reproduction of racial stereotypes and discrimination of marginalized groups in society. In this body of work, researchers have often drawn on insight from cultural studies, critical theory, and postcolonial studies, apart from the analytical tools of different approaches to discourse analysis. In these chapters, we outline key studies which have contributed to this topic. Instead of attempting to be exhaustive, we aim at highlighting intellectual milestones in this area and pointing toward some directions for future research. Discursive construction of race, reproduction of self and other. Early critical studies have exposed the historical emergence of the ideology of racism by analysis how the European colonies' discourse of race was formed, both in conjunction with and in support of the slave trade and slavery institutions. Hall pointed out the West is not a fact of geography, but a historical construct discursively produced and reproduced in colonialism, and it functions to classify societies and people into different essentialist categories. It produces knowledge about the superior or white West and the inferior or non-white. It discursively constructs both the binary categories of cultural self and others and binary sets of knowledge about them. It was said, Orientalism, a key text in postcolonial theory, shows how the colonialist discourse on the Orientalism has constructed a knowledge of the East and power knowledge relations prevailed in the West. The Orient was a European invention, and the Orient has helped to define Europe or the West as its constructing image, idea, personality, and experience. Drawing on the source, Linguistic Theory, 1975, on how signs gain their meanings not through representation of external facts, but through the setting up of internal contrasts. Postcolonial theorists argue that the colonialist has to construct an inferior cultural and racial or ethnic other in order to know who he or she is. Example, the English are racist not because they hate the black, but because they don't know who they are without the black. Whiteness studies and its critics. Whiteness studies were initiated as scholars began to focus on whiteness as discursively and socially construct, to problematize its link to power and privilege. However, in recent years, whiteness studies has been critiqued chiefly for its difficulty in moving against or away from the master narrative rooted in white supremacy. Another critic said that there is the danger essentializing whiteness, which is as worrying as the danger of essentializing blackness. Essentialist constructs of race, of ethnicity, and or of self and others, however, seem to categorize not only earlier colonialist discourse but also contemporary and late discourses, which constitute our topic in the next section.
The next topic is about elite discourse and racism. Elite discourse examines how language and communication, or just discourse, define, mediate, and legitimize class privilege. Van Dijk mentioned that ethnic stereotypes occur because of thought and experience. He saw elites as playing an important role in the authorization and legitimation of racist policies and everyday racist practice. He saw it as an important empirical project of discourse analysis to collect the data and demonstrate the discursive and cognitive processes which racialized self and other are constructed both in elite discourses and everyday texts and conversations. The next topic is about everyday discourse and the new racism. New racism is a concept that has been applied to prejudice and discrimination based on cultural differences between ethnic or racial groups. This includes the idea that some cultures are superior to others, and that various cultures are fundamentally incompatible and should not coexist in the same society or state. The new racism of Western societies is a system of ethnic or racial inequality consisting of sets of sometimes subtle, everyday discriminatory practices sustained by socially shared representations such as stereotypes, prejudice, and ideologies. Racism is also involve the everyday negative opinions, attitudes, and the ideologies and the seemingly subtle acts and conditions of discrimination against minorities. Those namely the social cognition and social acts, processes, structures, and or institutions that directly or indirectly contribute to the dominance of the white group and the subordinate position of minorities. Racist ideologies continue to be reproduced in everyday discourse. With the global spread of the internet, everyday racist discourses in the new media environment have become a rising concern. Parker, 1981, argued that compared to earlier colonialist discourses which focus on physical appearance to construct racial and ethnic categories, the new racism discourse focuses on culture to universalize and essentialize a superior cultural self and an inferior cultural other. In his research, Anderson, 2008, found that 10 of her interviews created links between speech styles and racial identities, and they valued these speech styles differently and used these linguistic classifications to justify their hegemonic attitudes toward different racial groups. The next topic is about positioning theory and storyline analysis of racist online discourses based on Lin and Tong 2009.
A sample study was conducted by Lin and Tong in 2009 using positioning theory to analyze weblog messages to see how different participants use discourse to construct cultural self and other, and their discursive moves in drawing and shifting boundaries of different subjects' position within the storylines they created or offered. The messages analyzed were collected from Hong Kong Television Broadcasting or TVB's web-based discussion forum of Daejeongeum from January to May 2005. All messages related to cultural and national topics and construction of identities and storylines are selected for in-depth textual analysis. The age of the samples collected, approximately 80%, are inferred to be young students from Hong Kong. Daejeongeum is set in political backdrop of Joseon that was pressured by two strong aggressive powers country, which are China and Japan. In the consumption practice of Hong Kong viewers, they seem to exercise selective attention to the dramatic text and choose on those aspects that they can readily identify with culturally and emotionally. Here is an opening message for the topic transliterated from the original Chinese language. Stella, there are things which you don't know. Joseon is greatly influenced by Chinese culture. Joseon people have been blah blah blah. This message shows the writer's xenocentric attitudes toward the Great China in history. It reproduces and reaffirms the common discourse among Chinese people that China has been historically influencing Korea with its relatively strong and superior culture, and loaded with this discourse seems to be the speaker or writer's sense of cultural pride. When one of the members discovered that the Korean writing used in the dramas looks exactly like the Mandarin characters, a member of the group nicknamed AVO replied, "Yeah, I noticed that too. Not really sure, but back in those days, China was considered the center of the world. So a lot of countries in the vicinity adopted Chinese ways. That's how Confucianism got spread to Korea and Japan. And I think the writing too. Even the current Japanese writing still incorporate Chinese characters. This comment was posted on 25 January 2005 with viewer rates less than 100 people. The term "center of the world" expressed the Sinocentric storyline or narrative of the historical China being the center of the world and the origin of highly civilization in Asia. This seems to be a storyline strongly held and affirmed by the fans in reproducing a kind of great cultural China discourse. The fans create and assign themselves the position or the character in the storyline as the culturally superior Chinese. At the same time, they over the Koreans and the Japanese culturally inferior character. One important point is that these members adopted one of the useful strategies of communication, the metaphor of weather-like principles. Their discourse positioned Korea as both the cultural offspring, who was described as constantly learning from Chinese culture. This storyline is further extended and elaborated in this members' racist discourse to position Japanese as not just inferior cultural or ethnic other, but also an immoral non-human. In March 2005, Japan revised their history textbooks, omitting the mention of their invasion of China during the Second World War. This act sparked many protests in Chinese communities in China and Hong Kong, as well as great anger among some of the web forum fans of Dai Jiangome, who posted messages with harsh criticism of Japan and the Japanese people. In their messages, many fans position implicitly and indiscriminately all Japanese as bad and even as dogs by making reference to the invasion of China by Japan, the ways in which Japanese soldiers killed many Chinese civilians in the Nanking Massacre during its invasion of China. This is the most frequently cited historical event and provides the resource in establishing the major storyline of all Japanese are bad in the forum members' discourse. In order to highlight China as a historical victim of Japanese aggression, the fans tried to amplify the goodness of the Chinese and also the badness of the Japanese. When the subject is produced, the other is the excluded or mastered subject created by the discourse of power, and thus the construction of other is fundamental to the construction of the self. Ashcroft et al. 1998. This othering process ensures that they can put Japan in an unprivileged position. Here are two examples of the linguistic othering practice engaged in by the fans. Both are under the topic "Will all of you watch Edo?", which was posted by CCC on 16 April 2005 with viewing rates up to 2,600. The message is, do you think that it's good to learn the ways of treating others viciously with a friendly exterior, it requires us to learn how to hurt or kill others. The damn Chinese traitors and Japanese dogs will like this. We Chinese won't be so vulgar. We Chinese are simple and honest. We have love and honor, better than the Japanese dogs, who use deceitful and treacherous ways to harm others. Posted by Chinese people on 16 March 2005. Here's the second message. I'm so happy that I'm a Chinese. I'm so proud of my identity as a Chinese. I agree with what a friend called Octopus said before. Very meaningful. He or she said there are some bad Chinese. They have faults too, but many good Chinese people have taken the responsibilities of those bad people. But how about Japan? They did something wrong, didn't apologize, and even didn't admit their fault. If I am a Japanese, I won't act like those Japanese who just escape from their responsibilities. I will apologize to China and also teach my next generation not to commit the same fault again. Not like a cold-blooded animal without feelings. Posted by Chinese people on 16 March 2005. We can see that some fans use the term "we Chinese", who are simple and honest, in comparison to the Japanese dogs, who were described as using deceitful and treacherous ways to harm others. The choice of the solidarity words of "we Chinese" produce a clear and privileged through victimhood as occupying the moral high ground, subject position over Chinese. All this together made up a stable storyline with three main collective characters, or cultural personas, or stereotypes. The first one is the good, honest, and simple Chinese, regarded as I, we, or us. The second one is the bad, dumb Japanese dogs who treat others viciously with a friendly exterior, who are indexed by the deictic words they, them, and other. The third collective character in this storyline is the Korean, who is positioned as playing a supporting role, i.e., a weak victim humiliated by the Japanese, whose function is to magnify the badness of the Japanese.
That's all from us. Thank you for your attention. Have a good day.